All right, welcome everybody. Sean Reynolds and Ken Weeb from Sportsnet joining you here for the Kenny and Renny live post-game show after a big Jets victory, a 3-2 victory over those pesky Ottawa Senators who, Ken, they sure have been looking good lately. I mean, I was taking a look at that game, and I thought for the first two periods, these are two teams that are neck in neck with each other, not just in the score, but style-wise, everything. I thought it was a pretty impressive performance from the Ottawa Senators tonight.
Yeah, they certainly don't go away easily, Sean. We know the Jets have had some difficulty with them throughout various points of the season, and for two periods, it was a challenge again at times. There's no doubt about that, but the Jets put together a pretty impressive third period. Special teams right in the midst of everything, and Laurent Brossoit slammed the door with the exception of a 6-on-3, a rare 6-on-3 goal,
Right.
something we have not seen for quite some time. But overall, I think the Jets were pretty tidy defensively in that third period. Was it their best game by any stretch? No, but I think anyone who's played hockey at any level knows that these kind of games can be dangerous. When again, it may sound a little bit strange, but when a team plays a team that has really nothing to play for, there's really nothing to be gained. If the Jets win that game, they were supposed to win, and not only were they supposed to win, they were supposed to win 5-0 or 18-1. Not that bad. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but if they lose the game, it's the end of the world because they should never lose to a team like that's out of the
Two
playoffs.
consecutive games, especially, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's again there were some awkward moments. I would say like going back to the Claude Noel days, this would be they can't all be Picassos. It was certainly not a Picasso out there for the Jets. It was not a painting, but again, sometimes teams have to win when they don't have their absolute best. We spoke this morning, Sean, about the potential for line changes, and you got your wish. You got your wish. You and Alyssa
I had
absolutely
such a good setup for that. I wanted to go to here. I'll go retroactively and do the setup. I was going to say, where do we want to go next, Ken? Do we want to go to a bit of analysis where I was right, or a bit of analysis where you were right? And if you had said, let's go where I was right, I was going to be like, well, to be honest, I can't find any analysis where you were right, so let's go to mine.
Oh, hey, I put it on a tee for you. Why can't you just take the compliment? I went out of my way to say you made a nice call, and you right away you gotta try to plant the division here, the divisional seed. What's the deal?
No, you know me. I tease because I love. But what Ken's talking about is it's been in this space. We've talked a lot about two things. One, I wanted to see that line back together: the Ehlers, the Kopp, and the Stastny. And what I wanted to see too is I wanted to see Stastny back at center, and I wanted to see Dubois back on the wing. And so I got both those wishes. And Paul Maurice had said that he liked what he saw from the team afterwards, after he made that change. He also said that he thought with that Ehlers, Scheifele, Connor line, it was, I don't know. He said in the past he's felt. I mean, it's surprising he left them together that long because he always said, "I feel like we've seen too much of the same thing from them." But he'd said, their plays just kept dying on the vine, kind of thing, and they needed a different element to it. So that's where you get that change. But your thoughts on the change once they made it?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I think it worked out pretty fine. I mean, it wasn't domination station for either one of those lines, but I thought there were some encouraging moments for sure. I definitely thought that, Paul Stastny looked pretty comfortable in the middle. I think he's been doing a nice job in terms of his adjustment to playing on the wing, but of course he's more comfortable down the middle. I thought he looked comfortable there. In terms of the other line, I thought even before the change was made, we talked about this at the end of last game, Sean. I thought that it was important for Mark Scheifele to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of looking for his shot more. We saw him drive to the net, which is something that you wanted a little bit more of.
Right.
Again, it helped that the defenseman fell down, but he was already in the midst.
He was going to do it either
driving.
way.
He was definitely driving to the net, putting his shoulder down. I thought he looked for his shot more. And again, here's the other part. I mean, Mark Scheifele has a 5-game point streak, right? He's still finding a way to contribute on a regular basis. I know it's not only points, but even on the games where he's not on fire from minute 1 to minute 60, he still found a way to produce. And I liked his game a lot today. I thought he looked for a shot more. He was very engaged. He was very engaged defensively, and made a couple smart plays there. And definitely it was something that is worth looking a little bit further. Again, I think long term the Jets want to use Dubois on the down the middle. Someone mentioned they thought it was concerning. I don't think it's concerning at all. Again, he's someone that I prefer to see him down the middle when he's going and when he's clicking. But right now, I think that Dubois kind of got back to the point where this is to take a little bit off his plate. Let him go to the wing, go to the net, drive the net. That's what we saw in the second period. Mark Scheifele's line kind of could use somebody who went to the net a little bit more, and that's something that they did well together. So again, this is one of the things. The next line in the next line in the next line in the spinning rotation.
Right.
One of the other interesting things that I noticed, Tony Hockey mentioned it, and I'd be curious, based on the fact that when Patrick Laine was in the biggest funk of his career, Paul Maurice put Patrick Laine on a line with Adam Lowry and Brandon Tanev for that first game in Finland. Now, I'm not suggesting Kyle Connor is in a funk like Patrick Laine was, but I wonder if trying Dubois with Perreault and perhaps Scheifele might be worth a shot at some point too. I mean, Who knows? I mean, I wonder if that's one of the things in the line blender spinning Rolodex. But
Marshall Patterson here says, "What's up, boys? When will they stack the center spot and go 55, 13, 26, and 17?" I mean, I thought their fourth line again was one of the better lines on the evening, and has been for a long time here. I don't know why you would. I mean, I know why you would do that, because you want to get center ice time for all four of those players, and that makes sense to me. But at this point, there's
not enough time. There's not enough ice time for them. Sorry, there's not enough ice time for them. That's why they're not going to do it. But
you're eliminating a solved problem to just try and get these guys into the middle. I mean, here's the thing. I want to go back to the Scheifele thing. You talked about him driving the net and that player falling. The player falls because he's trying to react to Mark Scheifele, who has a shoulder on him and is getting to the net. And so we talked about that in the last post game. I think we need to see more of that. If it's Dubois going on that line that leads to that little bit of a change in style, bless his heart for having that happen. Because I mean, the constant, and people brought it up in our chat room last time, the idea of the Jets busting in, getting defensemen on their heels and using them on their heels to curl and buy space for themselves to try and look around and make those pretty passes. If you get a guy on his heels, that's a time when you get to bowl him over. And that's what we saw from Mark Scheifele in that play. So, I mean, that type of play, I want to see that a little bit more. I liked seeing it on this evening. It's one of the things I liked about when they changed those lines. I'm with you. You know, they switched the lines, and it's not like that's what won them the game. It was special teams that won them the game, which doesn't surprise me, because I'm thinking the Sens are an inexperienced team, and special teams is, I think, where, I mean, it's no fluke that they went out and they got Trevor Lewis and Nate Thompson to go and take those roles, because those roles are quite often reserved for veteran players, because it's a cerebral thing to do, to go out and be on the power play and be on the penalty kill. So I'm not surprised that that's where the Jets pulled away tonight. I'm interested in seeing more of what these lines can do, but this is the interesting part. So my grand plan was this, except for one more thing. Now Dubois has gone in the wing. The last part of my grand plan that I would like to see is Dubois go down to that third line in Kopp's old spot. And I wonder, one more game left to go here on the road. I'm not saying Blake Wheeler is going to be back on the weekend, but he could be, the way things are going. If they go out tomorrow and have a really good game. Well, here, let me just finish the pitch.
Paul said he would need a practice before he could come back, and they're not going to skate on Friday. He needs some contact. So
he needs to practice with the team, or he needs to practice?
Well, I mean, unless the assistant coach is going to be providing the contact on an individual skate on Friday, I just think that Saturday is a little bit early.
So we won't see him until at least the game after that. But I mean, if the lines continue, and I think we expect them to at this point, I mean, they're not going to put Blake on the third line when he comes back. So if the second line is working, if that Ehlers, Kopp, and Stastny trio is working, and I mean, who's going to the third line, Ken? Or will they break up a working second line, that line we've seen them break up before? Are they going to break that up again if it's working? Or what's the next move? Because to me, the most obvious move is to bring Wheeler back and move Dubois down to that third line.
Corey says, "Shut off the blender." That's a good one. I should have highlighted that before I started talking.
We should probably get to that. I think let's talk about that and where we're getting.
I mean, it's a fair question. I mean, I don't. I mean, depends on Wheeler's feeling. I also think that I disagree with you to a degree. I mean, I do think that it's unlikely, but we've seen Paul Maurice use Wheeler with Stastny on what was kind of a quasi third line once before. So in coming back from a concussion, I do think it would be possible for him to be eased back in on the third line. So again, it all depends on how he feels. I mean, we know Blake Wheeler would love to go back right in the lineup and play 18 to 20 minutes, but I mean, it doesn't mean that's where it's going to start or where it's going to stay. So yeah, I mean, Kopp is most likely to go back down. Butter's right. That's the role that Andrew Kopp is in. It's to provide a boost when one is needed, and when that's not needed, he goes back onto the third line, onto the checking line.
I'm good.
Here's the thing: the Jets have a lot of options, Sean. We both know that, and I think we're kind of arguing the same side here. But I mean, if that Stastny line is dominant, of course Maurice is going to be tempted to keep them together. And today was for all the people that said Paul Maurice wouldn't do it because it was the obvious thing to do. Well, he just did it again. So, yeah, I mean, it's we'll see what happens. There's lots of options to be.
Did you see this? Did you see this one, Ken? I couldn't believe Ehlers didn't get a penalty when this happened. I mean, it blew me away.
Was that on the reverse hit, or which one was that? Was that a different play?
No, it was the one where he slashed the guy, and then the guy came. He didn't just trip him; he like hacked his skates and tripped him right down. And I was watching, and I was thinking, there's no penalty on this. I was kind of surprised by it. Anyways, I want to get back to the previous point we were making. Ken, I have a dream. That the Winnipeg Jets at some point are going to stop messing around with ideology and just go with the players who are playing best for once. Just take the guys who are playing the best and give them the best opportunities when that happens, and not take those guys and break them up from their good situation to try and get other guys going, because ideologically those guys are the guys who should be running this team. And so people are saying this here, and a very good point was made. Butter, he says that the Dubois not, or that it's Kopp who will go down. He's right. We know he's right. That's what's going to happen. And someone else said, why would we trade Line just to bring Dubois in and put him on the wing? That's right as well. But the fact of the matter is Dubois, in my opinion, has not reached the heights at center with the Jets this year that Paul Stastny did earlier this year. We know that they're going to, not yet, right, but there's 13 games left in the season, and we're constantly searching for this path of least resistance to get him going. At some point, can't you just take the things that are working and the guys who are going and go with the hot hands? That's all I ask, is that a team at some point, you remember this, we did this early. I don't even think we were doing this show yet on Instagram. But when they first broke up that Kopp, Ehlers, Stastny line, that was phenomenal at that time. And they did it because Wheeler was struggling and Scheifele was struggling, and they needed to get those guys going, and they did it. They broke it up, and it got Scheifele going. That was the beginning of Scheifele taking his jump and running up into the top 10 in the league scoring. But I just keep coming back to this. Why is it that on this team in years past, a guy like Patrick Laine was left to figure it out, to figure his way through things, and why then do the Jets take and break up things that are working to try and get things that aren't working going? Why not leave the guys who are working, let them lead the team for a little while, let them carry everyone through, and let those other guys figure it out on their own? They're big boys, they're good players, let them figure it out.
Yeah, I have an easy answer to that. The Jets can't win in the playoffs with two lines going or with one line going. So yes, the fourth line seems to have been solved, no problem. We know the Lowry line has generally been consistent, but they haven't had enough nights where the first and second line have been going at the same time. So they also are trying to find not just the short-term solution. They're trying to find a combination platter that can help them win multiple rounds. They're not just interested in beating Ottawa on a Wednesday night in late in the season during the dog days of spring, wherever the heck we're at right now. They're trying to figure this out in order to try to go on an extended run. So to me, that's the simple answer. That's not to say it is the best way to go about things, but here's the thing: they're looking for solutions in terms of how they want to go on an extended run. In the short term, it has hurt certain players, and probably the players that you talked about the most. It has hurt them. There's no doubt about that. But the Jets are trying to find. They haven't had their optimal lineup yet this year. It's true. They have not been able to find the optimal line combos and all of them going at the same time. With the exception of maybe a handful of games. So. They need to figure that out. If they want to even get out of the first round, they're going to have to figure that out. So I think it's important that they continue to try a couple other things and then see where that takes them. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm giving you the other side of the coin. That's how the coach is viewing it. The coach views it like that. That's what the coach is viewing it that way because that's a great line. But that line is not going to necessarily outscore Austin Matthews' line in the playoffs. And if you don't get any other lines going, then it doesn't matter if that line's the best line. They won't be able to win just with that line going. And again, that line has been very good at certain times. So I'm not opposed to keeping that line together, but it has to be under the guise of they have other lines that are effective and going.
So that becomes the next question then. They haven't seen their optimal lines yet this season. How concerning is that? With 13 games left in the season, how much of a concern is that? Because we're starting to ask those questions. We're at the stage. So, and when I say that, I want to make sure, because we were talking about this earlier on today. People will jump on us and accuse us from hiding from asking certain questions or doing whatever. We got accused of not. Or when are you going to ask this question? Someone said to me on Twitter today, "When are you guys going to ask this question?" And he was asking me the information based on the question that I had asked. He's like, "When are you going to ask this question?" It's like the information that you are citing right now came from a question that I asked, right? But I say that because we're getting to that area of the season, and I'll use the same idea that I did in the pregame. I go back to my measure for success with this team is that 2018 team, right? And as that's sure. Obvious, it would be for everybody. And I know it's a different team, but I very much remember down that stretch. What was it, Ken? They were behind the Predators like 9 or 11 points. It was something like that, like a ridiculous amount of points back with like 10 games to go. Right. And they just kept winning and winning and winning and closing that gap. And they got that close to shutting them down, or sorry, to passing them, which really it didn't matter because they beat them anyways. But that team was locked in. Their lines were very defined. Everyone knew they were playing. Their D partners were very much defined. Now, I know this is a different year, and I know it's a shorter year, so maybe that has something to do with it. But not finding your optimal lines with 13 games to go when it sounds like you're going to be tinkering with rookies popping into the lineup here and there, and you have to bring in potentially a new guy in Jordy Ben who may play, or he may be the seventh guy. We're not sure yet. But tinkering at this stage seems to me to be a bit of a dangerous game. Do you agree or no?
I don't. And again, not outright. I mean, of course, in a perfect world, the Jets would like to have their line combinations figured out. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people are on Dubois in the comments, and I don't want to get. I'm not quite in the mood to get riled up quite yet. The Leafs have no idea where is Nick Foligno going to fit in best. They have no idea. They're the best. They're the best team in the North right now. They have 13, 12 games left to figure that out. So I assume they're going to have time to figure it out, just like I think the Jets will have time to figure out where their other pieces are going. I think it's important to be able to move some guys around. Would it be better to be able to have everything set in stone? Of course, but there's nothing optimal about this season. There is always going to be a little bit of an element of surprise, I think. The majority of the questions have been answered, but there are still a few questions left to be answered. So I think it's important to test out a few of those other combinations. I mean, it's not optimal, but I think that's just the way it's going to be this year. I know it's not ideal. I mean, the Jets would prefer to have 30 games to figure it out, and then they could use the last 15, 20 games to just roll with what they have. But, there are still going to be injuries that come. There's going to be question marks. There's going to be guys who dip. There's going to be guys who go on hot streaks. That to me, it's the way it's going to be right now. I mean, Alex Galchenyuk was picked up on waivers, right? He was picked up on waivers, and he's played in the last couple. Recently he's played with both John Tavares and Austin Matthews. So there are adjustments on the fly happening in every market. There are curveballs being thrown. Nobody on the bingo card had the Calgary Flames beating Toronto and beating Montreal, right? I mean, most people had left them off to play out the string. Now all of a sudden, Calgary thinks they're in it, right?
Yeah.
So, and until they get knocked out of it, they're in it. So,
yeah. I mean, they're going to have to take.
They got to go on a ridiculous run.
I went and I looked at it because they play Montreal a whole bunch of times because a lot of those Montreal makeup games are against them.
4 more times.
And so I was looking at it and I thought, like, even if they run the table against them, they still, so like it's not even at the stage where if they run the table against them, their fate is in their own hands. That's how far behind they are. So, I mean, they've got a lot of making up to do there, but the Canadians have looked terrible since, right. that first game against the Jets. I mean, I want to here. Let's get back to something. First of all, I just wanted to highlight this comment here from Rick. I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just that you were wrong, Kenny. Every time you start saying I'm not disagreeing with you, this is exactly what I hear in my head.
Rick is on
the ball. You're a perceptive guy. He's on the ball.
So one quick one: 5 of 7 regulation losses for Montreal. So
yeah,
is it likely they fall out of it? No, but
no. But it's
not likely.
Stuff to figure out there. Yeah, here we're talking about the Jets. They really got something to figure out.
None of us had the Leafs losing 8 of 9. The Leafs are the best team in the North. They lost 8 of 9 games at one point. So to dismiss any hot streak outright, I don't think that's a proper thing to do. It's unlikely, but it's still possible. So, and that kind of goes up back to our morning discussion where Paul Maurice was talking about, yes, I want to try these things out, but for a guy who's been in the league for 2 decades, he wants to make sure that ticket gets punched before he plays, a bunch of the prospects or whatever else, or get other guys in the lineup that he wants to see play. I mean, the danger of letting off the pedal late in the year is a real thing for teams, especially when it looks like they've had the separation of the 4 teams. And then all of a sudden, things happen. Pro was hurt a lot last year. Waiters, I just want to take this quickly. I mean, Pro had a tough year last year, but he also, and a lot of that was injury related is what I would say. And he was not playing at that level. I think that having the extended offseason really helped Matthew come back energized and refreshed. And he's been great. No matter what line he's played on, he's been exceptional. He's one of the best stories on the Jets this year. If he wasn't making $4.15 million, he'd be the biggest bargain in the NHL.
Oh, yeah. Got to say hi to Stonewall Dave here, who I know from the lake out in Lactabani. He says, hates to bring it up, but did Maurice talk about the D-post game? Was he asked about any potential changes? So he's been asked about the potential changes, and that's, in the morning. What we were kind of touching on going before the game. We asked him about it because he talked about the platoon of like potentially getting all those different players a taste of the NHL, and I know we had this conversation already, Ken, but when he made that platoon comment, I'm trying to find out how serious he was being, or the suggestion of being, hey, if you want to see all these guys, then this is how we got to do it, right? Like in a way of saying, like, that's not what we're seeing. Because if you were going to see that, that's what you'd need to do, is just have a Rolodex of those guys and spin them in and out of the lineup from night to night with 13 games left. So if you're talking about Logan Stanley, Samberg, Niku, and Heinola, right? So, but I'll say this: I'm entirely at a loss. I don't know what we're going to see on the back end heading down the stretch here. Do you have any guesses? Because at this stage, I mean, they got to find a way to get Jordy Ben some games to see what he looks like. And of those 3 players, let's not include Logan Stanley, of Niku, Heinola, and Samberg, I don't think we're going to see Samberg, but do you think we'll see both those other 2 or just one?
I do. I think we'll see both. I think Samberg's been hurt the last while. Again, and going back to what Kevin Cheveldayoff said going into the season, he was excited about seeing Logan Stanley start his professional journey after his development path took him through 3 years at the University of Minnesota Duluth. Was it possible that Dylan Samberg would maybe get a recall game to get his debut late in the year? Of course, and he still might, but it's unlikely. I think that we will. I definitely think that the Jets will see Ville Heinola. I mean, we heard what Paul Maurice said this morning about wanting to see certain players and young players against the likes of Toronto, against the likes of Edmonton, and against the likes of Montreal. The Jets have their next 7 games are against playoff teams. So the last of the experimentation for me, Sean, you talked about how late in the year it is. I'm with you. I think that they're going to want to get some of that stability in those last 7. So they got these next 7 against the playoff teams. For those last 7, they want to be more stable. And, if they have to give some guys some rest, they will. But, I mean, the other thing we can't discount, are those final 2 games against Vancouver even going to be played? Like, what's going to happen this weekend when Vancouver comes back into action? Is it going to go smoothly? We know JT Miller made a lot of headlines today. Yeah. If all those games are played, then no problem. They'll do their whatever, combination of load management. They'll do that. But until they know that, they don't want to be resting guys so that they miss, a week or 2 before they start playing games. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns still.
Ken, let's play this game. This is a great game to play. And Jeff Johnson, for people who don't know, I've highlighted him before, but if you've been watching hockey over the last 30 years, you've been Hockey Night in Canada, you've seen Jeff Johnson's work. He's the guy who's the mastermind behind what you've been seeing on your TV screens. I like this. So here, let me go first. I think, this is actually tricky because is it what I think they are going to be or what I think they should be? I think it's going to be, and I'm going to go, I think what it's going to be is it's going to be Connor, Scheifele, and Wheeler on the top line. Then I think it's going to be Stastny on the wing, Dubois, and Ehlers. Then it's going to be, what we know of the third line right now, Kopp, Lowry, and Appleton, and the fourth line as we know it with Harkins out and Pro back down there. But if it was my say, I would flip-flop Kopp and Dubois. I really do think that would be a good spot for Dubois to go in. I think that third line with Lowry and Dubois there is going to be the line that they're going to be sending out to shut down the likes of Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews. I think he helps in that regard. I think moving him to the wing tonight, I thought that he played better. I think that, again, let's remember, he's 22 years old. He's the youngest player on this team. I don't think it's a problem to say to a guy, look, we think you're a very capable NHL centerman, but we are a potentially championship caliber team. And as it stands right now, you are not there yet, but that doesn't mean that you can't help us on the wing and be very strong on the wing once we take some of that responsibility off your shoulders. And I think if you put him on Lowry's line like that, 1, you learn a lot from playing with a guy like Lowry, but 2, I think that's as effective a shutdown line as it is with Andrew Kopp. And I think, like I've said, that Stastny, Kopp, Ehlers line, I think showed magic earlier in the year. And we're at the stage now, Ken, if we've run ourselves out of runway to tinker with the lines and get things going like they did back in 2018, I think you have to go back to lines that have shown you something. And I don't think there's a lot of line combinations they've had that showed as much as Ehlers, Kopp, and Stastny did when they were together. Your turn.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I've had some time to think about this. You've convinced me of a few things before. If Dubois is going to be used on the wing, I'm a little more open to seeing him play with Lowry and Appleton on that checking line. If they're going up against Matthews, if they're going up against McDavid, does it make sense? I mean, sure. I mean, is it my first choice? I'm not willing to go there yet, but you've tilted me here to the point where I at least would consider it. So I would say congratulations to you on that.
It's like moving a mule, people.
Yeah, you're moving the needle.
Like moving a mule.
I'm not fully on board yet. Sorry, there was something that Jared Gervais. Yeah, so I think you misinterpreted what I said. I think that was what I was saying, what Kevin Cheveldayoff was saying going into the start of the year.
Where's Jared Gervais? Can I bring up this comment? What are we talking about here? For the
It's
people
just
who are
about the
listening
stuff
on,
about
yeah.
Cheveldayoff. I think
Chevy said we have internal
what
players who can
Cheveldayoff
step
said.
up.
I mean, you were. I mean, I'm guessing you were not on our pregame show, but what I said is that when he reinforced Heinola, he said he would like to see Heinola at some point. So he didn't say put him in immediately. So that's how I feel about that, and I hope that clears that up if there was anything that needed clearing up. Sorry. In terms of my optimal lines, it's interesting. I mean, if Dubois prefers to be on, I mean, again, right or left, I mean, I think that Dubois and Lowry could do massive damage on a line together for sure. But again, I mean, that line there's a combination that's interesting, for sure.
Yeah, but the problem
Can they
with this
land
line,
on that? I'm not sure.
no, they can't, and here's why they can't. Because if they're going to go with this line, they have to go with Scheifele, Connor, and Ehlers. And
No, they
Maurice
could use
has
Appleton there then. Use Appleton on that. I think that would be the subsequent move. You can keep
so
your
you'd
line.
you'd be more likely to demote Kyle Connor or
It's
Nick
not a
Ehlers
demotion
to
if they're playing
third
the most
line.
important. If the job, it's the most important job in the
Then
series.
why
Shut
have you
those
been
guys
fighting
down.
me so hard on moving Dubois down there?
I personally want to see him at center. I think it's his best position. But again, if he's not going to be able to,
So that's
settle
interesting.
in.
That's
Well,
interesting.
if he's
because
not
that's
settling
what it
in-
comes down for me. So the difference that we have in philosophy is you want to see him in center, and that makes sense. And clearly, that's where the organization is. Clearly, that's where the coach is. I boil it down to as simple as this: if I'm taking a look at the top three centers on this team, I think the top three centers on this team this year have been Scheifele, Lowry, and Stastny, not Scheifele, Lowry, and Dubois. I think Stastny, in his time at center, has shown better in that position than Dubois has. And again, I mean, it's funny that it's so quickly come to this, that we get a new player again who's the youngest player on the team, who, in me saying this, I'm not saying Dubois is a bust. I'm not saying they messed up. I'm saying that he's 22 years old. And to have the experience of a guy like Stastny, who's played really well at center, why not use that? Why not take advantage of what you have in your lineup? And I don't know. I'm wondering if tonight seeing him move Dubois to the wing is a slight bit of an admission of that. I'm wondering if, because that line of Kopp, Ehlers, and Stastny had that magic before, if that wasn't a little bit of a litmus test for Paul Maurice to say, I keep saying that I'm tinkering with these lines, but I've never actually gone back to them. That line was a success. Let's see if at this stage of the season, when we haven't seen these lines for 2 months, that chemistry can come back like that. Because that's my other concern here, Ken. If we're rolling the dial and turning on the blender and we decide, okay, with 5 games left in the season, we're going to go back to some of the lines that worked with us earlier, who's to say that chemistry is going to be rediscovered that quickly? And so tonight, I thought that maybe that was a little bit of an experiment in that direction by Paul Maurice, to say this was one of the lines that we had this year that worked really well. Let's throw it back together to make sure it still works, because finding chemistry in 24 different trios is not going to play that well if you can't rediscover that chemistry 2 months, 6 weeks out.
Yeah, I mean, smart coaching. I mean, you went back to it. So now if you have to go to, if you're going to that well in the playoffs, Sean, now you've been there recently, right? So now it's not 2 months out, it's a month out. So hey, I mean, it's worth investigating. I mean, do I think they're going to get there? That I'm not 100% sure yet. I love the intensity. Usually I'm the one yelling, so I love to see Sean fired up about firing up the cause here. I do appreciate it.
I'll whisper. Cena Ryan, I'll whisper for you next time.
No. Don't whisper. Don't whisper. Again, I understand doing my best not to get too fiery about this, but and when it comes to Dubois,
we're allowed to get fiery.
When it comes to Dubois, folks, 22 years old. Show me the last person. Like, okay, I'm just going to use a comparison, and this has nothing to do with the personalities. Like, look at how difficult it has been for Patrick Laine, who went through the same messy public divorce from the team that drafted him. How's it going for him? I love the fact that he was able to bounce back from the frustrating time by going end to end, and you could see the joy. Like, that level of joy in his face has not been evident for the last little while. So good for him on finding it.
Yeah.
When you have to go through Patrick's quarantine was about 5 days. Like, Dubois had to sit out for 14 days, then got hurt. So have we seen the best version of Pierre-Luc Dubois? No. Pierre-Luc Dubois is the first person to say that. So I'm still pretty confident he's going to find the best version of himself when the time comes and when it matters for the Jets. So again, I'm not saying that he's played great, but I'm also saying that it's absolutely absurd to think that he has no chance to find it or that he is somehow not going to work out. The guy is an excellent player with a lot of room for growth. He's willing to put in the work to get that growth. So deep breath and enjoy the ride is my advice. And people can ignore my advice. I am totally okay with that, but I'm not on board and I'm not on side with that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I respect those opinions even if I don't agree with them.
Ken,
I would also encourage you to look a little bit wider on the lens in terms of perspective.
Are you talking to me or are you talking to the people?
The folks that are down on Dubois and think that he's whatever. I mean, that's just see how it goes. Let's see how it goes.
Stir in the pot here.
Yeah, exactly.
Stir in the pot. Speaking
Glad
of
that he showed up. Yeah.
I don't want to give people too much of a peek behind the curtain, but my daughter had to use my phone for a school project tonight, and she handed it back to me, and I had 36 text messages, and I was like, "What did I miss?" And Billick and Kenny got into an argument that you included me. You included me in the text, and it was like this ongoing. It was this ongoing argument. Man, we should bring him in here and just let you guys go at it for a while, because people are right. I think I lost it. I think I need a nap now after that rant.
I'm gonna have to fill you in, Sean, for all the days when you're not sitting at press row with us. So that was an episode of What Are You Talking About? That's the unofficial podcast that Scott Billick and I have had for the last several years.
About?
And the joke was going to be, the show was brought to you by Sean's Headband. So I'm sure that Sean's Headband will love the fact that he is the unofficial sponsor of that side podcast.
Hey, this is a good point. The front runner for the Calder Trophy this year was drafted the year before Dubois. He's still really young and isn't completely developed yet. I mean, I go back to that time, which is why. See, I feel like when I bring up the whole Dubois to the wing thing, that people get really offended by that, and I think part of that has to do with the idea that trading Patrick Laine, which I think deep down scars almost every single Jets fan out there, it only works if you solve that second line center issue, which just hung in the air for so long on this team and was such a problem for a long time, that people can live with losing Patrick Laine if that ever remaining problem is finally solved. And I get it. And that's where Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to end up, and he's going to be there for a really long time. But I just keep going back to the fact he's 22 years old, he's young, and like my rant earlier about why not just play the guys who are playing really well, I come right back to that with Stastny. I personally believe at center we've seen better work from Paul Stastny at center this year than we have from Pierre-Luc Dubois. And if you're going into the playoffs, you want to ice the best team you have. And to say that to him is, in my mind, it's not an insult, and it's fairly easy to do, because what you're saying to him is, see that guy over there, Paul Stastny, who you have massive respect for, which we know that he does. He's been in this league and paid his dues and done this for a really long time, and he's going to take your spot that is going to be your spot with this organization for as long as you want it. He's just going to take that spot, and he's going to use it this year, and you're going to go and you're going to play beside Adam Lowry, and you're going to be really, really good, and you're going to be extremely important to this team, because this team isn't going anywhere unless that line works and shuts down the other team's best, especially in this North Division. And I think it's an easy sell. I think it's an easy sell to a young player to say, you're going to go here, you're going to affect the outcome of games like this, you're going to watch someone you have tons of respect who's going to take that role, and then you're going to take that role in the future on this team as we continue to win going forward. I don't think it's a hard sell, and I think people get really upset at me when I suggest it because of what I said about solving that second line center position. It's not an insult. It's progression. It's bringing a guy along, and he's young enough that it's easy enough to make that argument to him, and easy enough for him to understand as a young player who recognizes how young he is.
And further to your point, Sean, for the folks in the comment section that did not read my feature on Pierre-Luc Dubois, it's not like Pierre-Luc Dubois spent his entire life playing center. It's not the case. The guy was a winger until he was 18 years old. Marc-Andre Dumont, his junior coach, said one day they had 2 injuries and they needed a guy to play center. And Dumont went to Pierre-Luc Dubois and said, hey, what do you think? Do you think you should give center a go? Yeah, sure, I'll try it, coach. I'll try it. Even though he was in his draft year and had been a career winger, he was up to the challenge. And the other part of that, he said he spent 45 minutes taking draws with his assistant coach at the end of practice. So I think that he could fit in fine on the wing if that's where he had to start. I would also say, too, I mean, his playoff record is pretty good. So even though he maybe isn't his best right now, I mean, again, if the best place for him is on wing, it's not going to be something that leads Pierre-Luc Dubois to bang on Kevin Cheveldayoff's door and say, hey, I came here to play center, trade me right now. That's not happening either. I think he would be open to it. Again, in a year that's been challenging on a number of fronts, maybe it's even easier for him. We talked about, the fact that he got bumped to the wing with Wheeler and Scheifele earlier was to help unlock his game. And it helped for that stretch. Yep. So if they're going to do it again, sure. But I think it's much more likely that he gets unlocked to play on a line to help Mark Scheifele than it would be to go to the checking line with Lowry. But at the same time, I could certainly get on board with the prospect of having him play with Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton against McDavid, against Matthews, if that's what they
how formidable would that be? 2 guys as strong as, I mean, man, oh man, would those guys rough you up.
This is a great line, C-Mac. There's no doubt about that. This is the other part for all the people that say Dubois is not earning his money. Hey, this is a guy with the potential. He's not a 2C. This is a 1B currently, and he's going to be a flat out number 1 center. Yeah. And if he signs that long-term deal with the Winnipeg Jets, the Jets essentially will have 2 number 1 centers. And here's the other part, that you're right, it's not a knock. Paul Stastny's been in the league for a long time. And he's an excellent... The Jets solved the second-line center in the short term by getting Paul Stastny for a very reasonable price. So I also like to go back and check the receipts for all the people that said, well, why do the Jets have to give up, 4th round draft pick and Carl Dahlstrom?
He'd do it, people.
Are you kidding me?
He'd put on the little taxman hat. He'd put the glasses on. He would check all your receipts. So
come back and check the receipts.
Don't flip flop on Ken. He will go back and he will check every last one of these shows on you. Hey, one of the things I love about this is an awesome comment from C-Mac. I love that. One of the things I love about this show is we've been going Dubois heavy because people are talking about Dubois, and then Lynn Reimer comes in and says, enough with PLD, can we talk goalies? And this is all I need to switch gears and get in on Brossoit, because I thought it was very interesting, Brossoit's game tonight. I brought it up in the post game because, it's so long ago. I don't know how many people remember, but Brossoit's last outing was a travesty, right? And people were very upset, and they figured that he cost them the game against Calgary, and he wasn't happy with his game. And it's funny because the way he talked about that game after that game was very different than the way he talked about that game tonight, and how he's responded and what he's done.
This is even better. This is even better. I'll check all the receipts.
Ken will go all night on your Twitter feed. It's true. He's watching all of you. All of you when you sleep. You know how you joke he doesn't go to sleep? He doesn't. He gets and he takes all your names down. He follows your Twitter feeds, and he's making sure that you guys are following your own words there.
It helped Vegas waiters. Sorry to interrupt. Yes, but the Jets also solved one of their biggest problems for a 4th round draft pick.
Yes.
I don't understand this concept.
I know.
I don't understand this.
Ken, don't let them do it to you.
Sorry.
Don't let them fire you. Let's talk about Brossoit and how he approached what was a really disappointing game that he could have sat and chewed on this entire time and taken him in the wrong direction. And instead he seemed to very much take it in the right direction.
Oh, he was very solid, and I think that one of the things that happened early on in the game was that early power play that the Senators had, where they got the Brady Tkachuk high slot chance, and what did Brossoit do? He calmly used his body, made himself big, and didn't give up a rebound. For me, so that's why that was the whole point of why I asked what kind of signals that Brossoit looks for from himself to know that he's sharp, right, in the game. So when he saw that sort of said to me that he was going to be on his game. We know, again, Sean, we're at practice. We see when he goes out early with Wade Flaherty, when he's going on and doing his early work. I can't, Corey, but my father, Ken Sr., can. I come from accountant lineage, and I was not going to be able to follow in the footsteps because I wasn't nearly good enough at math or have enough patience to be an accountant, which is obviously evident on the post-game show on numerous occasions. Can Laurent Brossoit be a number one? I'm not sure. We knew that he would have to, last year was a tough year for Laurent Brossoit. So we knew he was going to have to come back in a situation, which again, I think it was smart on Laurent Brossoit's part to double down. He knew the situation here. He knew in the situation that he would be getting some opportunities to play. Even though you're stuck behind a Vezina Trophy winner, that means you're not going to get a lot of starts. I mean, again, Sean, we remember, speaking of receipts, when I asked Laurent Brossoit in training camp how many games he wanted to play, he said 20. He's not going to play 20.
No.
But I love the fact that he was aiming higher than what he was going to get. That tells me that he will continue to push to be better. I'm not sure if he can be a full-on number one, but I'm pretty sure he could be a number 1B on a team. And in a time where, in an 82-game schedule, where teams are going for more of a cost-sharing or increased-sharing program, where it's 50-30 or 45-30, speaking of math, 45-37 or, 45-37, somewhere in that range. I think
we'll
he could do it.
We'll wait for you.
Yeah, exactly. Carry the two. Exactly. Laurent Brossoit will be an unrestricted free agent, so I think that after this year, he's probably going to be gone. I don't see him taking another 1-year deal with the Jets. But here's the thing. It was important, and again, I know that there was a lot of second guessing happening, people saying that Brossoit should have started last game. Why? The guy just had a shutout, and there was a back-to-back coming out. I mean, Brossoit was not going to play 2 out of the 3 games. No one could have looked in the crystal ball after a shutout and said, you know what's going to happen? Well, you know what? Hellebuck's playing 7 in a row. He's going to struggle. Like, that just wasn't the case. He had been absolutely lights out before that. So the fact that he played him today, I think, was smart. You're going to have a sharp Connor Hellebuck against the Leafs. The Jets are going to have to be better than they were today, but they've got the position where they've got their number one guy going, and we'll see how they respond. There's plenty of time to see how the Jets are matching up with the Leafs, and that's going to be a lot of fun. But Brossoit, back to the original point by Lynn. Brossoit's been great for the Jets this year. He's had a couple of stumbles, but if we're being real, like if a guy plays once every 2 or 3 weeks, there are going to be stumbles, even if you are at the top of your game, which is almost impossible to be when you don't play. So I think he's been excellent for the Jets. It was an important year for him to rebound. We know there were a couple of those blowout games that he got involved in last year that were tough for him. I mean, Sparky Seattle would be a great fit for Laurent Brossoit. Depending on who they get in expansion, I think a lot of people think that maybe Seattle might target someone like Jake Allen. There's going to be some other teams that have goalies that they may have to move. But I mean, we'll see. I think he's going to have a solid career, and I think he's going to be able to spread his wings after he leaves Winnipeg. But he may not have been able to get to that point without the time he spent in Winnipeg, working with Connor Hellebuck. Those two have pushed each other well, not just in the off season, but during the season, and they support each other well. And I mean, I think it's worked out. It's been just a great fit for both of them.
Let's tackle this one really quick because it's an interesting question. What do you guys think of Vegas being exempt from the expansion draft? I don't like it personally. Now this rule would have been set up before they entered the league, right? Like was it not?
Yeah, I mean, it was part of coming in.
It was part of them coming into the league. So this was
they've been in the league for 5 minutes. Why should they have to give up a player? I mean, based on the cost of what it cost them to get into the league. I see this.
Okay, so that's the big thing is what happened with getting expansion teams is they're paying so much to get in. That's the trade-off. It's not like the old days where you'd get an expansion team and you didn't really have to break the bank to do it, and then the trade-off was that you were going to suck for a really long time and you were going to be lost in the woods. Now you're paying, I mean, what was the $600,000 for them to get it? Or sorry, $600 million
between $5 and $650, whatever the number was. I'm not 100% sure, but
I think
It
it's
was
either
high.
6 or 650. But I mean, if you're buying a business for that much money, you don't want to be buying a business that the risk is that they're going to give you a really bad team and you're going to suck for 10 years.
Yeah.
And in the time when it's most important to be drawing people in and owning a market, that
Right.
you're going to suck for that whole time. And then 10 years in, you're good. And then 3 years it takes of being good to convince the people to actually show up because you've been spitting in their face by wasting their money for the last 10 years, right? We're in a total different stratosphere in sports now. If you're paying to get an NHL franchise, you got to be a very rich person who's not the kind of person who's coming in for charity and who is successful in business. So they don't want to have an unsuccessful business for 10 years. So that's the trade-off now is these teams pay to get in. And that's why Vegas had a different entry into the league than what we used to know of expansion teams having, where they would be terrible for a really long time. So part of that, this is one of those concessions that was made for paying all that kind of money, is we're not going to put you in a situation where you're going to have to lose a guy. Now, I will defend Cena Ryan and say the way things turned out, I don't think anyone saw it turning out that way. Never mind the fact that they went right to the Stanley Cup final in their first year, but that after that, they leveraged all these assets that they were able to get and just took and went from being, a whole bunch of B players who fit together really well to going out and being able to snag a bunch of A-plus players in the process. This is, to Cena Ryan's point, this is not a team that needs to be exempt from losing a player by any means. They're one of the probably top 5, maybe top 3 teams in the league that can spare a player. So I get his frustration. I get his point. And at this stage, should they be exempt for it? Like, if I could change the rules, I'd honestly walk into their office and say, do you guys really need to be exempt from this? Like, take a look at your roster. But again, I go back to the fact that, and I don't know Ken, what do you think? Do you think Seattle is going to be able to get anywhere close to being able to replicate what Vegas has pulled off here?
Yeah, I wouldn't be throwing a lot of coin down on Seattle making the Stanley Cup final, and that's not a knock. They put together an incredible team.
Do you think they could make the playoffs in their first year? I still think that will be, even with the rules being the same and the playing field being the same, I think the lessons learned from the other NHL GMs in dealing with that first expansion draft, I do think that Seattle will be up against it to try and make the playoffs.
I mean, the one thing I would say is that just based on again, it's hard to say what it's going to look like before knowing what the team is, but they're going to have money. They're going to be an attractive free agent city at a time when a lot of teams don't have a lot of money to spend. So I do think they'll be competitive. And the other part of this for me is that they're playing in the Pacific Division. So we know that Vegas is in that division, very good. We know that Edmonton is still going to be very good, but because of where the California teams are at in their development path, it's not going to be easy for Seattle to make it, but I think there is an outside chance of them being able to make it. So, yeah, sorry, Sean, I know you can't see it, but your internet, you need the booster for your internet. You were going.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Your face was, it was like in Terminator. Like your
it
face
was
was
Tracers.
melted.
Max
Yeah,
Headroom. Remember that one? Who's old enough to remember Max Headroom? Was it one of those?
Amazing. I mean, again, Vegas. People think that Vegas isn't cheating. This was all agreed upon before they came into the league, so they're not changing the rules or trying to get an unnecessary advantage or whatever else. So, Rick, it is just Brita water for me. It is my go-to in the hydration station here. So, it'll be very interesting to see how it works out. There's no doubt. I'm sure. And again, to your point, Sean, there's probably tons of owners and GMs that got ticked off about how well it went for Vegas that are saying, of course they should be in it, but it's not a rule bend. This was agreed upon by a long time. So, I mean, again, I have no problem with it. So I am very curious to see how Vegas might try to, they're going to be looking to add players from some of those teams that are in a tough situation. And as they should. I mean, that's part of, people complain about the CBA all the time. I mean, if the Jets wanted to use a third team and send a draft pick out, they could have brought somebody over at 50% also. I mean, that wasn't, somebody on my timeline said that the Lightning and Leafs were cheating. Well, that option is available for all teams in the league. It's not cheating if it's allowed underneath the guise of the rules. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Kenny, is this true? Is Washington a no income tax state? I have family that lives there.
That's a
I don't
great
know
question.
that. If it is, I mean that's huge. I mean, if it is, I miss that, and that is absolutely huge because
Well,
we know
Texas,
how
Vegas, Nashville, I mean, or sorry, Tennessee. I mean, those are
Dallas
all,
and
yeah,
Florida, the
yeah. I mean,
Florida
those are all
teams.
places that are using it to their advantage. There's no doubt about that.
I
So
didn't. I don't. Boy, if hey, that is a great question, and if it's true, that kind of changes everything. Hopefully, people got my point last time when I didn't know my internet was breaking up. I guess I'll have to look into that. We got to hit
quick
on
one
this
though, just
before
on
we go.
the backup goalies there. Mikhail Burden is having a solid year again with the Moose. Is he ready to be the backup? I think he's close. I mean, I don't know 100% if he's ready. I've watched him play a couple games this year. I've liked what I've seen. The Jets are high on him. Would they want an insurance policy with some experience? I think it's possible. Certainly, it would remind me back to the days where the Moose were the farm team for Vancouver, where they often had an experienced guy like a Wade Flaherty, a veteran guy to go with a young prospect, whether it was Alex Auld or whether it was Corey Schneider. There was always a kind of there was a Drew McIntyre there too, a guy who was a good number 3 veteran guy that you wouldn't, Louis Domingue, a guy like that, a guy that would be able to pop into the organization. So, and I mean too, maybe Comrie's back as well. With the Moose, but I mean, we'll see how that goes as well. But Burden, solid. Arvid Holm, their goalie in Sweden, had a very solid year as well. I think I would say it's probably likely that he'll come over and play for the Moose next year, and then they'll sort of sort it out and see what happens from there.
Yeah. Hey, there's this thing called the internet, Ken, and I looked on it. Although mine's not working very well, Washington State does not have a personal or corporate income tax, which people were saying in there.
Sean's headband is prepared, man. His
he's been kicking. He's kicking it. He's kicking it. Well, he's kicking me around here a little bit tonight too. But hey, the last thing we have to touch on this, and we don't have much time left.
Oh man, look at that time.
Matthew
Look
Perreault.
at that time.
I know, yeah, Matthew Perreault, phenomenal once again. I'm just fascinated by how he came out at the beginning of the year, intent on proving something. You could tell everything that he said, and I always love the courage of players who come out and say, like, I have something to prove this year, and I'm going to prove it, and then they pull it off, right? Because it takes courage to say that you are intending to come out and do something. You're putting everyone on notice, and he basically talked about, like, wanting to get the space, and he's a guy who never complains when he didn't get the opportunities to play, just goes out and takes the opportunities he's got and makes the best of them. People were asking about Bressois if he's around here. I saw people earlier in the chat talking about whether or not he was going to stay, what you could keep him for. Someone I think said they hope to keep him for around $2 million or something like that. At this stage, with his ability to be a checker, to fill in on up and down the lineup, with his ability and what he's consistently been able to do on the power play, what could he command, and what are the chances the Jets could keep him?
Yeah, I mean, Sean, I know where you're going, and he's having a great year. I don't see a big market for the $3 million for Matthew Perreault. Again, I could be completely, that I may be wrong. I would think that it's going to be closer to that $2 million mark. Maybe another team sees him as a third line player, but I mean, I think he's the kind of guy that is your utility guy, your Swiss Army knife. Every team wants somebody like that. But in order for Perreault to make $2 to $3 million, a team needs to see him and make the commitment that he's going to be a third line player, because just the simple mathematics of a flat cap world, you cannot afford, if Perreault is on an excellent team and if he's on the fourth line, you can't pay guys on the fourth line $4 million or $3 million. The middle class is being squeezed. They're going to feel the biggest impact in this year's free agency, Sean. And Matthew Perreault is right in the middle of that class of player right now. So can the Jets keep him? Sure. Are the Jets going to keep him? Does Matthew Perreault want to go somewhere else? We know Matthew Perreault loves where things are at. We know he knows that he's valued here. We know that he is guaranteed to be on the power play, either on the third or fourth line. What is that worth? I don't know. I don't think Matthew Perreault has to take $1 million, but I think it'll be closer to 2 than it is to 3. But let's see what happens.
So we've got a lot of people saying stuff like, here Derek Dahlman suggests Frenchie's staying here for $1.8 million. I think I saw someone a little earlier said 1.4. Here's my question when it comes to that, because Okay, so if you're going to stay here, and you said he feels valued, I'm sure he does. He's felt a part of this organization. He's been here for its most special years. He's been a part of that. But he's also been a guy who's essentially been a fourth line player on this team for a couple of years, and that's not likely to change. If you're going to try and lock him up for 1.4, 1.8 million, and I know what you're saying, I know what we're going into in the offseason. There's not going to be a lot of money, so it's not like people can lure him away with big money. But are you able to lure away Matthew Perreault if you're a somewhat competitive team and you've got a spot for him for, I mean, if you're trying to get him for 1.8 million, wouldn't potentially a team like, and I'm just throwing names out, but like Washington or maybe the Colorado Avalanche, who love adding cheap depth, like wouldn't you bring teams like that into play if you're going to try and get a bargain on Matthew Perreault and just promise them, hey, you're going to get third line minutes when you come here, and you're going to be, for sure on our second line power play or something like that. Like
Colorado can't offer third line minutes for me. Can they?
Okay, right. So
all those contenders.
I shouldn't have given specifics because that's not where I'm trying to go. I guess the point I'm saying is like Matthew Perreault voiced his concern or slight frustration. He handles it well, but in my mind, he voiced his frustration at the beginning of the year about the lack of opportunity that he's had on this team. And you would have to say that's the case. This is a guy who was like a third to second line talent for a number of years, who's now lost any not ability to go in the top six, but any chance of going into the top six on this team. And his best case scenario for getting off of the fourth line is if there's an injury. So, I mean, is that what he's looking for? Does he want to be, a lowly paid fourth liner on the Winnipeg Jets because he likes Winnipeg and they're competitive? Or does he want to go and find a situation where with the remaining years of his hockey career, he can try and have the biggest impact that he can have?
Well, he's put himself in the position to max out on whatever money is available, Sean. I would argue with that on your behalf. I'm on Team Sean in that discussion. But I don't know how much money is going to be available for Matthew Perreault or anyone like him. And I don't know. So could Matthew Perreault go to Seattle and be a third-line player? For sure. But I don't know how many of the Stanley Cup contenders Matthew Perreault is going to go to and make $3 million and be guaranteed a third-line job. A year ago, at the start of this year, we weren't sure if Matthew Perreault, I mean, we know what the Jets said and that it was just for cap purposes, and you believe them, but I think there was at one point, based on the tough year that he had, I know that some people were wondering if he was getting the Andrei Pavlik treatment and that he would be paid his full salary with the Manitoba Moose this year. Again, it didn't turn out that way, but I mean, that was a legitimate question going into the offseason. Some people wondered if Perreault was going to be bought out, right? So he's done an excellent job of reviving himself.
I would say that there was a big chunk of the Winnipeg Jets fan base that was clamoring for him to be bought out. Would you not?
So that they could go out and get a number 2 defenseman, right? So Matthew Perreault's done an excellent job. He's having a great year. I just, the crystal ball is cloudy when it comes to how he's viewed by other teams, and B, what that dollar amount is going to be. Because again, and I understand this is a different situation. Joe Thornton was chasing a Stanley Cup, but a lot of really good players with a long track record took below market value money in free agency. And we just don't know when players get to be above 30, 31, 32, 33, there aren't a lot of teams that are going to make a multi-year commitment. So then it comes down to where things are at. And the other part too, CMAC was mentioning it. So for all the time we spent, screaming from the rooftops, not we, but a lot of people, fans, if fans want to see Christian Vesalainen and they want to see Jansen Harkins in the lineup all the time, then Matthew Perreault can't be on the third. I mean, then he basically has to either be on the third line or he can't be on the fourth line, right? I mean, you can't have both. You can't want to see all your prospects in the lineup and then have 34-year-old veterans playing on the fourth line potentially. So that distinction is going to have to be made by both sides. I think that Matthew Perreault still has plenty of hockey left in him, just like he said today. Is that going to be with the Jets? I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of that will have to depend on what happens with Adam Lowry or what happens with Andrew Copp. Because Matthew Perreault can keep the Jets in that window if a higher end player is lost up front among the forward groupings. But that also depends on, I mean, it's been a perfect year for Matthew Perreault. No injuries, which has been fantastic for him. He's suffered through a ton of unlucky injuries because of how hard that he plays.
Right.
So can he keep that up going forward? I mean, everyone hopes that he can, but you just have to wait and see. I think it's going to be, it's another one of those fascinating storylines to look for in the offseason. And again, Matthew Perreault is a playoff performer, and he knows what's at stake for him. I think he's going to be fantastic when it matters most, because that's the kind of player that he is.
All right, people. I want to apologize for the internet stuff. I didn't even know it was happening. I'll look into that and see if I can't get that fixed. Kenny, if it's not the microphones, it's the internet connection. We're just a couple guys holding this show together with Scotch tape and bubble gum.
MacGyver.
But we're gonna shut it down. We're gonna be keeping these shows to about an hour now. It's not because we don't want to spend time with you. Believe me, there's a reason behind it. We love spending a lot of time with you. We went 2 hours after the last show, and you know what? We're gonna find space to do that, and maybe open up some shows that are kind of designed for that, to just as hangouts and stuff like that. But we got to shut her down here this evening. So make sure you come join us tomorrow. Again, it's on my Instagram account. We do a 45-minute pregame show that goes on 45 minutes before the game. It's really great stuff, and we've got a really good comment section there as well that really helps drive the show. And of course, the post-game show after that, wherever you're watching it now, you can continue watching it there. But we do encourage you to get over to our YouTube channel, Kenny and Renny, and subscribe there that way, because we've got some ideas in the hopper. We want to start adding some stuff. So the more stuff that we add, the more stuff you can get to. We're always thinking of new ways to try and connect with everybody and get you the stuff that you like. And coming up Friday, I want to pump our weekly long form podcast. We're really excited to have Kevin Weeks coming to join us, and Jeff Merrick as well. Two guys we're really excited to catch up with, and we hope you're excited to come join us and catch up with them as well. Really appreciate your time, everyone. Really appreciate the comments. I really like this comment room today. They were slaying me time and time again. And I'm okay with that. I love that. I love the good burns. In fact, it's my fuel. It's what keeps me going, is when people are throwing the darts at you. It's good.
Kept you going tonight. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, no, it was rolling. So everyone, appreciate your comments. Thanks for joining us. Please continue to keep joining us. We love interacting with you. We love spending time with you. Have a good sleep. Get a good sleep, because we're going at it tomorrow, and it's going to be another good one tomorrow. Hope to see you then.